Good morning. My name is Noah Enright, and this lesson that I have for you today is catered to eighth grade social studies. And the overarching topic is the Civil War. But the specific area we are going to look at today is Uncle Tom's Cabin and how that became a cause of the Civil War. So let's get started. Good morning, everybody. Today we are going to be looking at the Civil War. Today's our first lesson of our unit on the Civil War. So we have a lot to talk about within these upcoming weeks, but we are going to start with the context of the Civil War and the causes of the Civil War within these first few days of class here. So let's go ahead and get started. Before I even jump into what we're learning about today, I have some questions for you, and I want to know first, what starts a war? What do you guys think starts a war? So respond in the chat, raise your hand. Let's talk about this as a class. Very good. Conflict starts a war, right? A disagreement. When two people want the same thing and they both can't have it, or maybe when two people want different things and only one person can get their way, right? That's what causes conflict. That can be between countries, nations, states, even siblings. You guys ever have a war with your siblings when you both want something? That would be a perfect example of that. So that's what starts a war. And we're going to look at where that applies to the Civil War today. So my second question here is, what do you guys already know about the Civil War? I want to hear your background knowledge. So respond in the chat, raise your hand. What do you guys know about the Civil War? Very good. So some responses I thought you guys might have for this question are outlined on this next slide here. So maybe you might have said the Civil War was fought between the southern and the northern states of the United States. So it was fought within our country, not between other countries, right? It was fought between the states. There were a lot of causes leading up to the Civil War, but the main one was slavery. So we'll look at how slavery plays a role in Uncle Tom's Cabin today, actually. We'll see why it's important there. Abraham Lincoln was the president of the US during the Civil War. So that's going to be very, very important. And we will touch on that a little bit later today and in our next couple classes as well. And why it was so important that he was determined the country remain united in one country rather than separating. That's going to play a major role as well. And lastly here, we have the Civil War was the deadliest war in American history with over 600,000 soldiers dying in the war. Isn't that crazy that the deadliest war in American history is one that we fought between ourselves, not even between other countries? I think that really says a lot about the Civil War and how important the ideals of the North and South were for the Civil War, that many people were willing to die. So we're going to look at all of that today. A little bit, but I just wanted to set the context before looking into Uncle Tom's Cabin. So this is what we will be looking at today. Our focus and our goals for today are laid out right here. One, we will examine the life of Harriet Beecher Stowe and the meaning of her book, Uncle Tom's Cabin. And two, we are going to analyze the impact of the book on the attitude of Americans leading up to the Civil War. So we'll find out why Uncle Tom's Cabin became a cause of the Civil War. That is our goal for today and our focus. So before we get to the book itself, we need a little background on who Harriet Beecher Stowe actually was, right? We don't know anything about her yet. Let's go ahead and learn who she was. So Harriet Beecher Stowe was a young girl that grew up in the North, which is very important. She grew up in the North, and this is significant because she was not exposed to slavery at a very early age. But as she was growing up, she would venture into the South, into the southern states where slavery existed. And there she would witness firsthand the horrors of slavery and how poorly they were treated. And the more she learned growing up, the more she visited the South and learned, the more horrified she became. She hadn't realized what actually went on in the South and with slavery. So as a result of her feelings toward this subject, she became something called an abolitionist. And as you guys read there, our key term abolitionist means a person who wants to stop or abolish slavery. So they want to put an end to slavery. So that's what Harriet Beecher Stowe became. She became someone really against slavery. And she wanted to do something about this. She didn't just want to sit around and feel sorry for slaves. She wanted to put her thoughts into actions. So to do this, she would write her book Uncle Tom's Cabin, which she had hoped would help the people in the North better understand the realities and the horrors that were going on in the South, specifically with slavery. So that was her course of action, was Uncle Tom's Cabin. So let's get to the book itself. What's going on here? What's happening in this book? Why is it important? So Uncle Tom's Cabin was a story about slavery. So in this book, Harriet Beecher Stowe outlines and depicts the harsh conditions experienced on a day-to-day basis by enslaved African Americans. So as you guys might have guessed, it took a very major anti-slavery stance because she was an abolitionist, so against slavery, right? She wanted to put that out there. She wanted to make people realize the horrors in this book. And to do that, she wrote a story about a kind slave who was beaten to death by an evil slave owner. And this isn't all fiction. We see that she's writing this based off true events that actually happened. And to learn about this, she actually traveled to the South, to plantations and places where slavery was. And she talked to slaves. She did research. She, learned about their stories and what would happen in their daily lives. So she didn't just stay at home in the North. She learned about slaves and their lives and wrote this book based on that, as you guys see from that cover there. And also from an advertisement, a poster that they would put up, it would become the greatest book of the age. And it was very significant. We're going to find out about what a lot of the reactions were now, right? What did people think when Harriet Beecher Stowe released this book? What happened? So one very significant reaction here was that the book became the best-selling novel of the 19th century, best-selling novel in 100 years. And it was only the second best selling book, only to the Bible, which shows how important and significant this book was and what people thought of it. Everyone had to read this book at the time. And not only in the United States, people around the world were reading this book. It was popular everywhere. And this is significant because places in like Great Britain had supported the South, but now they were less likely to do that after reading the book and understanding the horrors of slavery. So they were more likely to be against slavery, to support the North a little bit more. So that was very significant. All of those attitudes changing towards slavery. A lot of people became abolitionists, which is what was the abolitionist movement again? Yes, people against slavery, people who wanted to stop or abolish slavery, right? Many people joined that movement after they read the book. So that's very important. And also another major outcome from the book was that it helped Abraham Lincoln get elected, actually. And we talked about him at the beginning of class when we outlined that context of the Civil War. Abraham Lincoln would have a very major role in the Civil War. So the fact that he helped, that Uncle Tom's Cabin helped get him elected was very, very important. So we see this book become one of the major causes of the Civil War, and it also played a role in the other causes of the Civil War, which we'll look at later this week. But we see that it had that snowball effect. Everyone's attitudes changed. Everyone's lives got flipped upside down because of this book. And to help represent and show this, we are going to watch a quick little segment of a documentary that shows Harriet Beecher Stowe's life and a little bit about Uncle Tom's Cabin, why she wrote this book. So let's go ahead and watch it here.
You won't notice. Don't they all?
In the spring of 1833, 22-year-old Harriet Beecher Stowe crossed over the river into neighboring Kentucky. She had never before visited a slave state.
Here's this fine specimen here. What do you get? 25. 25? 50? We got 50 going once. 50 going twice. 50 sold to the gentleman here. How you gentlemen doing this nice warm Kentucky day? Gonna keep this thing going?
What Stowe sees there is a human thing. She sees these people. I mean, they're human beings. She's confronted with it in such an intimate way. And I think that never leaves her.
So that is, that really shows us, I think that does a great job depicting what actually happened during that time, because it's hard for us to imagine that sometimes, right? But putting that into a video really gives us that understanding of what life was like when Harriet Beecher Stowe went to the South and witnessed that. And another thing that will help us do that is the quote from Uncle Tom's Cabin right here that I have for you. Let's read it. For so inconsistent is human nature, especially in the ideal, that not to undertake a thing at all seems better than to undertake and come short. So what does this mean? What do you guys think? Right? This could have a couple different meanings, but what it really means is that sometimes the fear of failure is so strong within a person that it overtakes the fear or the feeling of success. Some people don't want to do something because they're scared of failing rather than trying to accomplish something that they really want. So this can be applied to slavery. How? Right. Some people were scared of the abolitionist movement and stopping slavery, so they just didn't do it. But it really took bravery and strength to go against that. To really go against that and to join the abolitionist movement and the Civil War even. This quote applies exactly to that. And even today, people feel that same way when there's something that they want to do, but maybe they're too scared of failure to do it. So I think that's an important quote that we see right from Uncle Tom's Cabin. Here are some memes for you guys to kind of relate to the meme stage we are in our lives here about Uncle Tom's Cabin. I think these are good ones. We'll go back to those a little bit later. We are short on time, but let's finish with our exit ticket today. 2 questions. I want you guys in detail and complete sentences to respond to the following. 1, why was Uncle Tom's Cabin such a significant book? And 2, Harriet Beecher Stowe chose to write a book to influence the minds of an entire nation. If you wanted to do that and change the attitude of a bunch of people, how would you do it? And why would you do it in this way? Think creatively, everyone. That's it for class today. That's where we are going to stop. Thank you guys so much.